Of course, the previous speaker spoke very eloquently about artificial intelligence. I'll briefly give an overview of the National Artificial Intelligence Strategy for Qatar that we developed in Qatar Computing Research Institute, which is part of Hamad bin Khalifa University. And I'll highlight the major pillars of the strategy and how people in Qatar can use the strategy to design how AI can be used in their particular domains. So briefly about just one slide about the Qatar Computing Research Institute. It's been around for nearly 10 years. So we have over 140 staff from over 30 countries. And we have a sort of a pretty good expertise in academic research and also industry research. So this strategy was developed in partnership with the Ministry of Transportation and Communications. A lot of the work was done in QCRI. So, there's a lot of expertise in data science, in AI, and machine learning. All the things that were mentioned before, which I will not repeat. So I'll skip all this stuff. This is about QCRI. I'll go to why an AI strategy for Qatar. As again the previous speaker mentioned, Qatar is a good consumer of of technology. So 96% of the people have access to the internet. The population is the local population is quite literate, and of course Qatar has invested a huge amount of funds in education, in research. Also, there's a the Qatar National Vision of 2030, where the goal is to make to sort of transform Qatar from a natural resource economy to a knowledge economy. And the general consensus is that artificial intelligence can help in making that transition. I mentioned earlier, this also has been mentioned. So what are the drivers of this AI revolution? AI has been around for a long time. It's been around for, since at least as Dr. Hussain mentioned, the phrase was coined in 1956. But, there's always AI hype. So, there was a hype for AI in the 70s, then it died. And then it again came back in the 80s or early 90s, and again it faded. So these periods where the hype, fell down is called AI winters. So there have been 2 or 3 AI winters. So why do we believe that they could be now is the time for AI? So I think there is a confluence of 3 things. There is big data, of course. There's computing, there's cloud computing. Computing is very cheap now. And of course, there's design of new algorithms. So it's a combination of these 3 things: big data, computing, and algorithms, which is the reason why there's such a big interest in AI. And people are, comparing AI to, the 4th industrial revolution, and that it's it'll be a sort of a change point in human evolution. Of course, like all things, there's a global race for AI. Many countries have released an AI strategy, starting from Canada. A lot of, Canada is a relatively small country in terms of number of people, but a lot of the new innovation, a lot of the research has actually come from Canada and not the US. So Canada was one of the first countries to have an official AI strategy, and then many other countries have come up with one, and each of them have a slightly different focus. So there's a pan-Canadian AI strategy, but again the focus is to capitalize on their research strengths, And then, there is, Japan came up with a strategy in the 2017, followed by China. And of course, China has made huge strides in AI. Some of that is, of course, cause of concern about surveillance, which leads to ethical issues. And then, there's, many other countries, Korea, and so that was one of the reasons that, we thought that Qatar should have a national AI strategy too. And as I mentioned earlier, we worked with the Ministry of Transportation and Communications, and then last year in 2019 at KitCom, the Minister, His Excellency, the Minister of MOTC, released the strategy officially. So it's now part of official government plans. And we are now working with the different ministries to try to roll it out and see how can we implement aspects of the strategy. So the strategy has several pillars. These they're shown here. There's a pillar on talent, on data, on employment, on wealth, on AI future, and ethics. So as Dr. Hussain mentioned, there's a huge, and Dr. Azmi I think also mentioned, there's a huge shortage of talent in AI. So the question is, how can Qatar build that talent? So of course there are two ways. One is to attract talent from other places, and the other is to have homegrown talent. And we believe that Qatar should have both, should follow both paths, especially in ingrown talent. There should perhaps be a course on data science, on AI at the high school level, and primary level, in the higher education and tertiary level. So, we want to work with the Ministry of Education and other school, education organizations to try and inject or embed the study of data science into the core curriculum of schools. So that's the one on talent. I'll just quickly go through them because I don't have enough time. The other thing is data. As I mentioned earlier, the AI revolution, so-called revolution, has three components. It's big data, it's computing, and it's algorithms. And Qatar is a rich country in natural resources, but by definition is a small country, number of people, so the amount of data is limited. So how should Qatar work with perhaps other smaller countries to perhaps pool their data? What should be the what should be the strategy or policy on data ownership, right? Sometimes, when we use our email, we use Gmail, where is that data? We don't know. Should we have policies about, and in fact, now there are some on data residency, data localization. Also, when you work with data, things become very different. So imagine a scenario like you're a doctor, say you're a radiologist, and you are looking at X-rays, right? Now, if it is a data-driven machine, then the data, and it's been trained using local data, then the analysis, the interpretation of X-ray images will be very different, because every country or every group of people will have slightly different characteristics. So the physicians, the radiologists will have to be trained to interpret X-ray images in a certain way. So similarly with other things, in financial aspects, in whatever occupation you are in, when you're working with data, you have to be trained to interpret your results in a different way. And so I think we have to really, in our jobs, in our occupation, in whatever activity we do, the role of data has to be carefully thought through and analyzed. Okay. So yeah, so that's some things about data. Then employment. Qatar, as you know, is a very unique country. There is roughly 3 million, 2.7 to 3 million people, but 10% of the population is local. And how can we use, how can AI be used to not replace but augment jobs? Of course, as the previous speakers mentioned, there is this sense that many AI will replace many jobs. So, for example, last year in the United States, 100,000 jobs were lost in retail because more and more people are buying through online shopping. But at the same time, 100,000 jobs roughly were created for drivers, for truck drivers, because the stuff that people buy online has to be delivered, right? So
2 minutes.
Okay. So maybe in few years, autonomous vehicles will come and take over those jobs. So the role of how AI will impact employment has to again be very carefully analyzed and discussed. Okay. I just want to give one statistics, and then I have to move on. 5% of non-Qataris and 27% of Qataris have clerical positions, but almost 45% of Qatari citizens have a university education. So there's actually a big mismatch between the level of education and the nature of employment. So there's an opportunity here for Qatari citizens and residents to actually, start working in sort of higher jobs, and also what we call AI augmented jobs. Okay, quickly have to move on. Of course, lots of economic opportunities. Qatar is also already a very mature system of digital governance. That can be used as a platform to grow the economy. And also, of course, Qatar cannot be a leader in AI in everything, right? So it has to pick and choose what are the areas to focus on. And we give in the strategy, we give some examples on, for example, medical tourism. We think, potentially there is, if you look at the data, there's actually a potential for Qatar to be lead in the area of medical tourism, also air cargo and higher education. So much investment has already been made in these areas, and so these are the areas to leverage. Okay, so all of these details are in the strategy. So this is just a very high-level overview of what we have written in the document, and I encourage you to go online and find the documents available. Just Google Qatar National Strategy, and you'll find it. And so I think also, the role of ethics, for example, in autonomous vehicles. Quickly, I'll finish this. You may have seen this Uber accident in the US. The person is driving the autonomous vehicle, a pedestrian crosses the vehicle. It's the pedestrian's fault, but the driver is almost sleeping. Who's to blame? Is it it's supposed to be an autonomous vehicle. So all these issues about AI and ethics really will come into the fore and have to be resolved, and a policy has to be built based on cultural aspects and the local know-how okay, so yeah, I think that's very quick, sorry. So that's thank you very much for listening, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.